Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the pre-recorded data release video on accessing and using data from the 2021 to 2022 study of family and staff well-being in Head Start FACES programs, also known as the 2021 to 2022 study. My name is Rinda Mahishi, and I am a data project manager for the Child and Family Data Archive, or CF Data. I'm joined today by my colleague from Mathematica, Maya Reed, who will be leading the presentation today. But before I turn it over to her, I will briefly introduce you to the archive and let you know about the structure of today's webinar. So the session is hosted by CF Data, which is where you go to access the data from the 2021 to 2022 study. CF Data is supported by a contract from the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation, or OPRE, and housed at ICPSR within the University of Michigan. It is the place to discover, access, and analyze data on young children, their families and communities, and the programs that serve them. Users are able to access our almost 400 data sets with the ability to analyze select data sets online. You can also search and compare variables and peruse data-related publications. And of course, user support is available to assist you in finding and obtaining data. I will go into a little bit more detail about CF Data later on in the session. For today's webinar, Maya will provide you with an overview of the 2021 to 2022 study, including information about the study background, design, participants, and data collected, as well as information on the data file structure and conventions, weights and variance estimation, and data user resources. Following these sections, I will give an overview of the Child and Family Data Archive and the resources that we have to support researchers, as well as a section on how users can request access to the 2021 to 2022 study data through the CF Data website. And now I am happy to pass the presentation over to Maya so she can share more information about the study data.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brenda. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Maya Reed. I'm the Data Archiving Lead and a Deputy Project Director for the 2021 to 2022 study, and today I'm excited to share information about this important study with you all. Let's start by discussing the study background. For nearly 60 years, Head Start has been a federal program providing child development and family support services. Since it started in 1965, Head Start has served over 38 million children and families who are economically disadvantaged. Head Start serves a diverse population and supports children's early learning and health, their families' well-being through educational services, nutritional services, social, emotional, and family support services, and cultural and language experiences. Head Start operates in 10 geographic regions and serves American Indian and Alaska Native communities in Region 11 and migrant communities in Region 12. The Family and Child Experiences Survey, also known as FACES, has provided national information about Head Start programs and participants since 1997. The 2021 to 2022 study is our current study. It was preceded by FACES 2019, and the 2021 to 2022 study builds on the design, the sampling plan, the instruments, and the procedures that were used in FACES 2019. FACES 2019 was conducted in the 2019 to 2020 Head Start program year. In fall 2019, we invited 60 Head Start programs across the United States to participate in child-level data collection, which included direct child assessments, parent surveys, teacher-child reports. In spring 2020, we plan to have those same 60 programs complete those activities again and add classroom observations and staff surveys, and invite 120 additional programs to participate in classroom observations and staff surveys as well. However, we canceled plans for direct child assessments and classroom observations due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Because of the continued impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Head Start families and staff, FACES 2019 did not continue in its planned manner. Rather than conducting the planned spring 2022 classroom and program level data collection, which would not have involved surveys of parents or collected information regarding children's development. Instead, the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation in the Administration for Children and Families, or ACF, of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services funded Mathematica to conduct a new data collection effort, the 2021 to 2022 study, for the fall and spring of the 2021 to 2022 Head Start program year. The goal of this study was to provide data on the characteristics and needs of families and staff after nearly 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's talk a little bit, just kind of give you a high-level overview of the outcomes of the 2021 to 2022 study. As I've mentioned, we were collecting this data in fall 2021 and spring 2022 after about 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. Participation and response rates were lower for the 2021 to 2022 study than we expected, due in part to the COVID-19 pandemic. Because of this, data users should not assume that data that emerged from the 2021 to 2022 study are fully representative of all Head Start children, families, centers, and programs. To understand the impetus for the 2021 to 2022 study, I'll discuss the study design, its participants, and the data that we collected. 2021 to 2022 study, including the sampling plan, instruments, procedures, and data analysis plans, drew heavily from the design of PHASES 2019. Like PHASES 2019, the sample design for the 2021 to 2022 study included 2 components, a program, staff, and family study, and a program and staff study. The 2 components answered different sets of questions, but also overlap to a limited degree. Both components involved programs that had participated in PHASES 2019, invited those programs to participate again, replacing programs that had closed or become ineligible. And there were no in-person assessments or classroom observations conducted as part of either component. The program, staff, and family study component was conducted in fall and spring of the 2021 to 2022 Head Start program year. This study included 60 programs and provided information about the children and families who participated in Head Start and their Head Start teachers. Data collection included surveys of parents and teachers, as well as teacher-child reports, or TCRs, in the fall of 2021, and then parent surveys and TCRs in spring 2022. The program and staff study component provided information on Head Start programs, classrooms, and staff, including directors and teachers. All 176 participating programs in the 2021 to 2022 study were involved in the program and staff study, including the 60 programs that took part in the program, staff, and family study. The program and staff study was conducted in spring 2022 and included teacher, center director, and program director surveys in all 176 participating programs. Again, that's the 60 programs that were selected and participated in fall 2021, plus 116 additional programs. Next, I'll discuss some key content areas of focus for the 2021 to 2022 study, summarizing much of the new content added to this study that was not captured as part of PHASES 2019. Alrighty, first let's talk about the COVID-19 pandemic. The 2021 to 2022 study aims to better understand the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on programs and centers, as well as on Head Start teachers and the families served by Head Start programs. The parent surveys included questions regarding children's behavioral changes since March 2020, children's participation in virtual or remote learning activities, and families' experiences with the pandemic. Questions also asked about employment and household income changes due to the pandemic, as well as open-ended items aimed at understanding families' challenges and supports during the pandemic. The teacher surveys gathered information about personal and professional challenges teachers faced due to the pandemic and the types of supports they found useful. The program director survey gathered information about emergency preparedness and the largest lasting changes to the respondents' program as a result of the pandemic. Similarly, the center director survey gathered information about the largest lasting changes to the respondents' center as a result of the pandemic. Each survey included at least one open-ended question related to pandemic experiences. Next, we'll discuss staff and family well-being. The 2021 to 2022 study instruments demonstrate a substantial focus on Head Start staff and family well-being. The parent survey included questions regarding parents' physical and mental health, including parental stress and anxiety. Additionally, the 2021 to 2022 study gathered information on teachers' stress and anxiety and supports for staff wellness and overall well-being in the teacher surveys. Additionally, the program director survey included questions regarding supports for staff well-being and program directors' mental health, including depressive symptoms, anxiety, and job stress. Similarly, the center director survey asked questions on center directors' mental health, including depressive symptoms, anxiety, and job stress. The next key content area of focus is social and community connections. The study focused on social and community connections for Head Start families, including questions on the parent survey aimed at understanding whether specific community services would be helpful or have recently been helpful to families. We also included items on the parent surveys focused on families' knowledge of and comfort in accessing community supports and resources. And the last key content area of focus was emerging policy issues. In spring 2022, in collaboration with the Office of Head Start and the Office of Management and Budget, the 2021 to 2022 study enhanced its focus on emerging policy issues related to understanding the changing landscape of early care and education, staff wellness, staff recruitment, and staff retention. Here we can see more questions that we added to the center director survey and the program director survey related to these emerging policy issues. Excellent. Next, let's get more into the meat of what data we collected as part of this study. On this slide, we can see our data sources for the 2021 to 2022 study. In fall 2021 and spring 2022, parents and caregivers of children enrolled in the 60 programs participating in the program staff and family study completed surveys via web or phone, and teachers completed a survey and rated their children's social and emotional skills, classroom behavior, and approaches to learning via the web or on paper. In addition, teachers reported on any concerns about the children and how those concerns were addressed. The program and staff study was conducted in spring 2022 and included teacher, center director, and program director surveys in all 176 programs. Program directors and center directors completed their surveys via the web, and teachers completed via the web or on paper. In fall 2021 and spring 2022, parents could complete their surveys online or by telephone interview. The fall survey took 35 minutes to complete, while the spring survey took 47 minutes for new respondents, those who had not completed a fall 2021 survey, and 31 minutes for returning respondents who had completed a fall 2021 survey. In fall 2021 and spring 2022, teachers could complete their TCRs online or by using a paper instrument. We estimated that the TCR would take teachers 10 minutes per child in fall 2021. After reviewing metadata for the fall 2021 instrument, we reduced the time for completion to 7 minutes per child in spring 2022. In fall 2021 and spring 2022, teachers could complete their teacher surveys online or by using a paper instrument. The fall 2021 teacher survey, only administered to teachers in the program staff and family study, took 10 minutes to complete. The longer spring 2022 teacher survey, administered to teachers in all 176 programs, took 41 minutes for new respondents to complete on average, and 50 minutes for returning respondents to complete on average. Program and center directors completed their surveys by web in spring 2022. Program director survey took an average of 59 minutes to complete, while the center director survey took respondents an average of 51 minutes to complete. Next, let's discuss sample selection procedures. The figure on this screen shows the flow of sample selection for the two studies and the expected sample sizes at each level of sampling. As I'll discuss on the next slide, we did not achieve all of these sampling goals. Here's what we planned. The 2021 to 2022 study used a multi-stage sample design with the goal of having an efficient, sufficiently large representative sample to be able to detect policy-relevant differences at the child level for the program, staff, and family study. The 4 stages of sampling design for the program, staff, and family studies were as follows. 1, Head Start programs, with programs defined as grantees or delegate agencies providing direct services. 2, centers within programs. 3, teachers within centers. And 4, children taught by each teacher. The sampling target for the program staff and family study was 60 programs, as shown in the second box on the left. We kept the sampled programs and centers from the FACES 2019 programs that participated in child and staff level data collection if they were still providing services in 2021 to 2022 and willing to continue participating in the study. Note that due to hybrid teaching situations during the pandemic, we opted to sample teachers rather than classrooms in the third sampling stage. We selected 2 teachers per classroom and occasionally created teacher pairs to meet the target number of sampled children. The sampling target for the program and staff study was 180 programs, including the 60 programs in the program staff and family study. We plan to recruit an additional 120 programs in spring 2022, as shown in the second box on the right of the figure. For this study, we used a multi-stage sample design with 3 stages: 1, Head Start programs; 2, centers within programs; and 3, teachers within centers. Again, we kept the sampled programs and centers from FACES 2019 if they were still operating and providing services in 2021 to 2022 and willing to continue participating in the study. We selected 2 centers in each program and 2 teachers in each center. Alrighty. So as I mentioned, although we selected a nationally representative sample of Head Start programs, centers, teachers, and children, fewer of them participated than expected, as can be seen in the table shown on this slide. When looking across programs in the program staff and family study, which entered the study in the fall of 2021, and programs in the program and staff study, who entered the study in spring 2022, we did not meet the expected number of programs, centers, or teachers participating in the study. Focusing on the 60 programs in the program staff and family study, participation and response rates were much lower than expected for the parent survey and the teacher-child reports, due in part to the effects of the pandemic. For example, in fall 2021, TCRs were released around the peak of the Omicron wave of the COVID-19 pandemic, which resulted in closures for many sampled Head Start programs and limited teachers' ability to receive and respond to this data collection request. As I've highlighted in the figure, as part of the program staff and family study in fall 2021, we received about 38% of the expected number of parent surveys and 43% of the expected number of TCRs. After continuing to collect parental consent forms through spring 2022 data collection, we ended spring 2022 data collection with approximately 51% of the expected parent surveys and 68% of the expected TCRs. Let's take a closer look at the instruments that were administered as part of the 2021 to 2022 study, beginning with the instruments included in the program, staff, and family study. First, let's discuss the parent survey. The parent survey was administered to sampled parents and programs in the program, staff, and family study in both fall 2021 and spring 2022. It collected information in several areas, including the characteristics of the child, the household, and its members, including the physical and mental health of the respondent, and aspects of the child's home life, as can be seen on the screen here. The teacher-child report, also known as the TCR, was collected from teachers of sampled children in the program, staff, and family study in both fall 2021 and spring 2022. It collected teachers' ratings of the children's current learning skills, social-emotional development, and approaches to learning, as well as information on developmental conditions and attendance. The fall teacher survey was collected only from sampled teachers in the program, staff, and family study. It asked about the teacher's training and educational background, professional experience, instructional practices, feelings about teaching and their Head Start program, mental health and well-being, and the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on their experiences as teachers and as parents in their own families, if applicable. In spring 2022, a larger survey was collected from teachers in the program and staff study that asked about learning activities and curriculum, planning and assessment, the classroom environment, and professional development, as well as about teachers' mental health and well-being. Let's look a little bit more closely at that We will look a little bit more closely at that second survey a bit later. Next, let's discuss the Program and Center Director surveys. The Program Director Survey and Center Director Survey were collected from directors in the Program, Staff, and Family Study in spring 2022 and addressed program and center characteristics, staffing and recruitment, staff education and training, curriculum and assessment, program management, use of program data and information, directors' backgrounds, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on programs and centers, directors' mental health and well-being, and supports for staff well-being more broadly. The Program Director Survey also asked about program activities and substance use issues in the community, and the Center Director Survey also asked about curriculum and assessment. And now we'll get to that larger teacher survey in the spring that I mentioned earlier. The spring teacher survey was collected from teachers in all 176 programs in the Program and Staff Study and asked about learning activities and curriculum, planning and assessment, the classroom environment, including languages used in the classroom, parent involvement, and professional development, as well as about teachers' mental health and well-being. It also collected information on the demographic and educational background and teaching experience of teachers who did not complete the fall 2021 survey. More information about the content of each of these data collection instruments can be found in Chapter 3 of the Data User's Manual, and the full text of each instrument can be found in Appendix D. All right, now let's talk about some differences between the 2021 to 2022 study and past PHASES studies. As I've mentioned, though its design drew heavily from the PHASES 2019 study design, 2021 to 2022 study featured changes to more fully capture data on emerging policy issues and staff and family well-being in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. The study also enhanced its focus on several areas, including families' experiences with Head Start, the intersection of Head Start with other early care and education systems, families' economic conditions, and classroom instruction. We planned to eliminate all in-person activities, including in-person sampling, direct child assessments, and classroom observations. In spring 2022, we added in-person parental consent distribution and collection in a subset of 15 programs, but all other data were collected remotely in fall 2021 and spring 2022. PHASES studies have typically achieved rates of participation and response above 80%. When recruiting programs and attempting to collect data from respondents during this difficult time, the 2021 to 2022 study was not able to achieve such participation and response rates in line with previous PHASES studies, which raises the risk of non-response bias in the data we collected. I will discuss our non-response bias analysis in section 4 of this presentation. Now that we understand a bit more about the data that were collected, let's review the structure of the data files and the conventions that are used in them. There are three 2021 to 2022 study data files. The Spring 2022 Center Program data file includes Spring 2022 Program Director Survey data, Spring 2022 Center Director Survey data, and Spring 2022 Center and Program contextual data. The Fall 2021 to Spring 2022 Classroom Teacher data file includes Teacher Survey and Teacher Survey contextual data. The Fall 2021 to Spring 2022 Child data file includes Fall 2021 and Spring 2022 TCR data, Fall 2021 and Spring 2022 Parent Survey data, Fall 2021 and Spring 2022 Teacher Survey contextual data, and Spring 2022 Center and Program Director Survey contextual data. Now, when I say contextual data, I'm referring to additional variables included in the data file that do not come directly from the survey instruments. This data may have been collected during recruitment or sampling, or in the case of the child level data file, includes composite variables created from data included in the other data files. These files differ in the instrument data and composites contained and the weights provided. Instead of instrument-specific files, the 2021 to 2022 study has merged data and includes weights organized around a unit of analysis. Each of the files contains a set of identifiers, or ID variables, that uniquely identify each case on the file. For example, each sampled child, classroom, teacher, center, and program. These identifiers are followed by cohort, a flag indicating whether the program and center are part of the subset of 40 programs with child-level data collection that also participated in PHASES 2019, making up cohort 1, the 20 programs with child-level data that did not participate in PHASES 2019, cohort 4, the 79 programs without child-level data collection that also participated in PHASES 2019, cohort 2, or the 34 programs without child-level data collection that did not participate in PHASES 2019, cohort 5. There's also a set of flags indicating whether there's a completed instrument for the case from each of the data collection instruments. Okay, let's continue our overview of the data file contents. The files contain item-level data from one or more of the study instruments. For example, the child-level file contains individual responses to items on the fall and spring parent survey and the fall and spring TCR. And the center/program file includes responses to the items on the program director and center director surveys. As you can see noted on the slide, there are some exceptions. And for those exceptions, we provide composite variables. Each file also includes a set of composite variables and scores that were developed from responses to questions asked in the appropriate surveys. Composite variables are made up of two or more variables or measures that are related to one another conceptually or statistically. For example, the classroom teacher file includes all classroom teacher composite variables. The child file is unique in that it includes not only scores derived from the indirect assessments in the parent survey and TCR, but also the composite variables from all data sources, parent surveys, the teacher surveys, and the center director and program director surveys. Finally, each file contains the weight variables and the stratification and primary sampling unit, or PSU variables, the level of analysis required to calculate design-based standard errors using the data on the file. Number of weights on each file vary. Okay, now let's talk about what item level data is not included. Certain data that were collected as part of the 2021 to 2022 study are not included on the data files, according to agreements with measure developers and publishers. Listed on this slide are the types of data that have been redacted from the data files that are available at the Child and Family Data Archive. Copyright protected items have been redacted in the teacher-child report form. These redactions are shown in the instrument in Appendix D of the user's manual. There are some other item-level variables that are also not included on the file. Some variables were coarsened to protect confidentiality. For example, teacher race categories with very low incidence were collapsed into other. Additionally, some item-level information, like income, is included as a composite variable rather than several item-level variables. The composite variable pulls information from multiple income variables to report the information as one categorical variable. The 2021 to 2022 study instruments also collected open-ended responses from parents, teachers, and directors regarding their personal experiences with the COVID-19 pandemic and the impacts of the pandemic on their programs and centers. Before making the files available to the public for restricted use access, we reviewed the verbatim text for all open-ended questions in the 2021 to 2022 study instruments and removed any personally identifiable information. We stripped unique identifiers, such as the names of people, Head Start programs and Head Start centers, geographic markers, such as the names of cities, states, and regions, and other potentially identifiable data, such as the exact number of staff employed by a Head Start program and the names or acronyms of various state agencies. We replaced such information with brackets, such as brackets around child's name or brackets around name of Head Start center to identify where data was de-identified. Okay, next let's discuss composite variables and scores. The composite variables and scores included in the 2021 to 2022 study data files fall into one of 5 groups. A full listing of the variables and scores are found in Chapter 7 of the user's manual. This is a summary of some of the variables and scores available with examples listed. For now, let's review the first 2 groups. Group 1 is child and family characteristics, which include child characteristics, household income and poverty, household characteristics and composition, and family economic risk index. Examples here would include child gender, race, ethnicity, and age, whether the child was enrolled in their first or their second year of Head Start, mother's and father's employment, household income, family structure, and family economic risk. The second group includes parent family processes in parenting, including family-child activities, parent mental health, parent-child relationship, social support, household food security, household financial strain, and household material hardship. Some examples here would include parents' anxiety level, social support, parent depressive symptoms, household food security, and household financial strain. Okay, the third set of composite variables and scores is around teacher and classroom characteristics. These include class size and ratios, the main curriculum used and alignment of curriculum and assessment, classroom language environment, and teacher characteristics. Some examples here would be teachers' depressive symptoms, teacher satisfaction and developmentally appropriate attitudes, and classroom characteristics including the main curriculum used, class size, and child-adult ratios. The fourth set is program and center characteristics, including teacher turnover, center language environment, Head Start year length, program schedules, center director and program director years of experience, the largest sources of funding for the center and the program other than Head Start, coaches or mentors in the program, data types that are linked electronically to child assessment information, staff compensation and support for staff well-being, center director and program director of mental health, and program level covariates. Examples here would be teacher turnover and program and center director of mental health, staff compensation and well-being supports, and coaching and mentoring in the program. And our fifth group is indirect assessment scores. Unlike FACES 2019 and previous FACES studies, 2021 to 2022 study does not include any direct assessment scores. All we have is indirect assessment scores that are based on teacher or parent ratings of children's social and emotional behaviors and teachers' ratings of approaches to learning and academic and non-academic skills. These scores also include teachers' reports of concerns about children's development, including disability status and type. We derive raw scores of children's social skills, problem behaviors, approaches to learning, and language and literacy skills from the TCR. We also derive raw scores of children's approaches to learning and changes in behavior from the parent survey. More information on indirect assessment scores can be found in Chapter 7 of the Data Users Manual. Okay, so why do we use composite variables and indirect assessment scores? The 2021 to 2022 study instruments lent themselves to the development of a substantial number of scores and composite variables. Therefore, we limited the series of scores and composite variables we created and included on the data files to those most crucial for answering questions about Head Start children, families, staff, classrooms, and programs. We also prioritized creating variables based on data from several items, or variables that required considerable effort to construct. For this reason, the data files do not contain variables that may be simple recodes or transformations of a survey item or question, such as transforming a continuous survey item into a categorical variable. Some variables use a combination of data from survey instruments and from a proprietary survey management system. For example, children's age and sex use data from this system and data from the parent survey. Many of the scores and composite variables from the 2021 to 2022 study have been used in FACES studies. However, others are new to the 2021 to 2022 study. Unless otherwise specified, we created scores and composite variables across all of the study instruments only for cases with valid responses on at least 75% of the necessary source items. Okay, next let's talk about data file conventions. The 2021 to 2022 study follows certain conventions when naming and labeling variables and assigning missing variable codes. Variable names in the data file use a standard set of prefixes to indicate the source instrument for each data item. For example, parent survey, TCR, teacher survey, and so on. And data collection wave, fall 2021 or spring 2022. The first and sometimes the second letter stands for the source instrument. TCR is represented by the code R, the parent survey by the code P, teacher survey by the code T, center director survey by the code C, and the program director survey by the code D. The following number is the wave. Wave 1 represents fall 2021 data, and wave 2 represents spring 2022 data. For example, fall 2021 items from the parent survey begin with P1, and data items from the spring 2022 survey, teacher survey begin with T2. For survey item level data, The remaining characters of the variable names correspond to the survey items and the source instruments. For composite variables, the remaining characters consist of mnemonics. For example, the question in the fall parent survey about how often someone in the family reads to the child is P1D01, whereas the composite variable from the same source on the number of people in the household is P1H8 size. We used a different naming system for analysis of weighting variables, which require data from several data sources or waves. The variable names use the same letter prefixes to represent data sources, but in varying combinations. We also use the numbers 1 and 2, representing fall 2021 and spring 2022 data collection waves. You can find more information on variable conventions in Chapter 6 of the Data User's Manual, including information on how multi-part survey items were labeled. You can also refer to the data codebooks and Appendix H for a description of the composite variables. Okay, now let's discuss sources of missing data. There are three sources of missing data in the 2021 to 2022 study: unit non-response, item non-response, and legitimate skips. Unit non-response occurs when an entire instrument is missing for a case. For example, the parent of a sampled child did not complete a parent survey in the fall. The analysis weights for the 2021 to 2022 study attempt to correct for unit non-response. Item non-response occurs when there are missing data on individual items that should have been responded to within a given instrument. Respondents may refuse to answer a question, state that they do not know the answer to a question, or simply skip the question. We generally have little item-level non-response because most of the data are collected using web instruments or computer-assisted data collection modes, like computer-assisted telephone interviews, that include real-time data editing, so some individual items may have substantial item non-response. The 2021 to 2022 study uses three codes to distinguish these three reasons from missing item data: refused, don't know, and not ascertained. There are also items that are only answered based on prior response or condition or legitimate skips. For example, parents may be asked for more detailed information on the language spoken in the home if they first indicate a language other than English is spoken in the home. The 2021 to 2022 study assigned a different code for such data to distinguish these from other types of missing data. You should determine how to handle data involving legitimate skips. Begin by reviewing the instruments in Appendix D to identify legitimate skips. How you handle these can affect your findings. For example, if you were interested in the percentage of all children whose parents usually speak to them in Spanish at home, and you simply calculate the percentage from the responses to question D10 in the parent survey, you will find that many children's parents report speaking to them in Spanish. However, to answer this question correctly, you must take into consideration those parents who reported only speaking English in the home in item D7 skip item D10. If we account for that legitimate skip and include those parents in the denominator, a much smaller percentage of children's parents report Spanish as their primary home language. How you handle missing data should always be aligned with your research questions. This screen shows the codes assigned to missing data for each type of data in SPSS and SAS. Okay, next let's touch briefly on some tips around working with data from the 2021 to 2022 study, given its complex sample design around using weights and variance estimation, as well as the aforementioned issues with non-participation and lower than expected response rates. We created 5 types of analysis weights for the 2021 to 2022 study. The program level weights are for analyses at the program level, including the program director survey, and are a component of weights in all subsequent stages of sampling. In addition, the center level weights, which we use for any analyses at the center level, including center director surveys, are a component of the teacher and child level weights. The teacher level weights are for analyses of the teacher survey at the teacher level and are a component of the child level weights. Given that some teachers teach 2 classrooms, we calculated 2 weights for the teacher survey, one at the teacher level and another at the classroom level. The child level weight builds on that program, center, and teacher level weights, therefore analyzing data on the child level weights that build on the program, center, and teacher level weights are for analyzing data on child outcomes, teacher ratings, both alone and together with data from the parent survey. The program level weights adjust for the probability of program selection and response at the program level. Center level weights adjust for the probability of center selection and center level response. Teacher level weights adjust for the probability of classroom selection and classroom level response. Classroom level weights adjust for teacher weights by the number of classrooms taught by teacher, and child level weights adjust for the probability of child selection and child level response, accounting for parental consent as well as attrition from fall to spring. That was a lot of information. A main takeaway here should be that because response rates were lower than expected, data users should not assume the data are nationally representative of Head Start programs, centers, staff, families, and children in the 2021 to 2022 program year. Now let's talk about non-response bias. Non-response bias can occur when the responses of survey non-respondents would have been different enough from those of survey respondents to make the survey results not representative of the full sample. Non-response bias analysis, or NRBA, examines two things. First, whether estimates of important outcomes seem like they might be biased because certain people did not respond, based on comparing those who responded with the survey to those who did not. And two, whether analysis weights lessen the severity of this bias. As response rates decrease, the risk of non-response bias for an estimate increases. Although bias cannot usually be directly measured, we can look for indications of potential for bias for key outcomes and examine whether the response-adjusted weights appear to have mitigated the risk for bias. There is no rule of thumb for how large a bias is acceptable, but the larger it is, the more caution is merited in analysis. Mathematica created non-response adjusted sampling weights to account for variations in the probabilities of selection and differential response rates among those selected. Although lower than expected participation and response rates may have contributed to the data in the 2021 to 2022 study not being fully representative of the populations of Head Start children and their families, teachers, classrooms, centers, and programs, using weights with the data is important to ensure that findings represent these populations to the extent possible. The 2021 to 2022 study uses a complex sample design. As we've discussed, not all programs, centers, classrooms, or children had an equal probability of selection. The study does not rely on a simple random sample. Furthermore, not all sampled children, families, programs, and teachers participated in the 2021 to 2022 study. And additionally, across the program year, some children left Head Start and thus were ineligible for spring 2022 follow-up by design. The 2021 to 2022 study analysis weights account for variations in the probabilities of selection, as well as for eligibility and differences in cooperation rates among those selected. They also account for sample attrition over time. We recommend that data users employ weights to make responses from sampled respondents more representative of those from the target population. Use of analysis weights reduces the potential bias in findings associated with differential selection and non-response. Okay, so why did we conduct non-response bias analysis? As we've discussed, participation and response rates in fall 2021 and spring 2022 were lower than anticipated due to the COVID-19 pandemic and its associated challenges. To investigate whether the responses from Head Start programs, centers, staff, and families that participated in the study differed from the responses we would have gotten from those that were unable to participate in the study, we conducted a non-response bias analysis, or NRBA, on data collected in fall 2021 and spring 2022 using covariates, that is, information that's available for both respondents and non-respondents that are plausibly related to key survey outcomes. Okay, so then how did we conduct non-response bias analysis? We analyzed program, center, and child level covariates for indications of potential bias due to non-response. The covariates were drawn from the Head Start Program Information Report, information provided by the Office of Head Start, and information obtained as part of the center and child sampling processes. Although we examine a wide variety of covariates that are available for both respondents and non-respondents, we are unable to test for potential for bias across all characteristics that might be important in assessing the risk of bias. For example, we collect information about center size, the number of classrooms, Head Start programs as part of the center sampling process and can therefore examine this in the NRBA. In contrast, although the 2021 to 2022 study parent survey collects information about parent depression, we are unable to include parent depression in the NRBA because we do not know how non-respondents would have answered those items. Now let's discuss our findings from our non-response bias analysis. We conducted 5 non-response bias analyses of data collected in fall 2021. Program participation, teacher survey response, child consent, parent survey response, and parent survey and teacher-child report completion in combination. We found some differences between the weighted estimates of covariates for the participating programs and the full sample that were large enough to conclude there is not ignorable risk of non-response bias for items on these surveys. Program-level participation is a building block for other weights, so users should control for the covariates where we found these larger differences in their analyses. When analyzing child consent and response to the teacher and parent surveys, most differences between the weighted respondents' covariate estimates and those of the full sample were small, indicating that these weights mitigated observable differences between respondents and non-respondents for those covariates that were tested. However, when we examined response to the parent survey and teacher-child report in combination, we found differences between weighted respondents' estimates of covariates and those in the full sample that were large enough to conclude there is not ignorable risk of non-response bias for items on the survey. Now let's examine our spring 2022 findings. We conducted 9 non-response bias analyses of data collected in spring 2022. Program Director Survey Response, Center Director Survey Response, Spring Teacher Survey Response, Spring Teacher Survey, Center Director Survey, and Program Director Survey Response in combination, Child Consent, Fall or Spring Parent Survey Response, Fall and Spring Parent Survey Response, Fall or Spring Parent Survey and Spring TCR Response in combination, and Fall or Spring Parent Survey and Fall TCR and Spring TCR Response in combination. When considering child consent and response to the Center Director Survey, the Spring Teacher Survey, the Fall or Spring Parent Survey, and the Fall and Spring Parent Survey, most differences between weighted estimates of covariates from respondents and those from the full sample were small, indicating that these weights mitigated observable differences between respondents and non-respondents for the covariates that were tested. However, when considering a response to the Program Director Survey, combined Spring Teacher Survey, Center Director Survey, and Program Director Survey response, combined Fall or Spring Parent Survey and Spring TCR response, and combined Fall or Spring Parent Survey and Fall TCR and Spring TCR response. The results indicated there may be remaining indicators of non-response bias for items on the surveys after weighting based on the covariates that were tested. Several of the covariate estimate differences remaining between the full sample and the respondents after weighting adjustments are large enough for us to conclude that there is not ignorable risk of non-response bias for these data. Okay, so what does that mean for you when you're considering data analysis? The rows in the table on this screen list the weights for which we conducted an NRBA in fall 2021. The second column indicates that there are indicators of the risk for meaningful non-response bias for survey items remaining after weighting based on the covariates we tested in our NRBA. As I've discussed, there were meaningful indicators of non-response bias after weighting for program participation and for the combined response to the fall parent survey and fall TCR. The remaining columns indicate whether users should control for the specified NRBA covariate in analysis using each weight. In a modeling context, potential bias due to non-response may be mitigated by controlling for any provided NRBA covariates for which there were large differences between the weighted respondents and the full sample estimates. Please note that blank cells in this table and the table that will follow on the next 2 slides do not necessarily indicate a lack of meaningful non-response bias, but rather that the weights mitigate observable differences on our covariates. Looking at this table, when using fall 2021 data, we recommend that all data users control for whether the program is in a metropolitan statistical area and for program enrollment. We also recommend that data users using the combined parent survey and TCR report data control for child sex, child participation in early Head Start, and the percentage of teachers and home visitors who left that were replaced. Next, we'll look at spring 2022 non-response bias analysis and the implications for data analysis there. This table on this screen is formatted just like the table on the previous slide. Here we can see that there were meaningful indicators of non-response bias after weighting for the program director survey and for the combined response to the teacher survey and program director survey and center director survey. So when using spring 2022 staff level data, we recommend that all data users control for the percentage of lead teachers or home visitors who left the program, and the data users using the combined response to the spring teacher survey and program director survey and center director survey control for the center's number of teachers. Got one more. Let's look at child level spring 2022 data and implications for those data analyses. Again, this table is formatted just like the table in the previous slides. Here we can see that there were meaningful indicators of non-response bias after weighting for the fall or spring parent survey and spring TCR response in combination, and the fall or spring parent survey and fall TCR and spring TCR response in combination. So, when using spring 2022 child level data, we recommend that all data users control for whether the program is in a metropolitan statistical area and for program enrollment. And the data users who are using the combined response to the fall or spring parent survey and spring TCR control for the percentage of teachers and home visitors in the program who left and were replaced. We also recommend that data users using the combined response to the fall or spring parent survey and fall TCR and spring TCR control for child sex, child age group, and the percentage of lead teachers or home visitors who left the program. Okay, last, let's touch on estimating variances and standard errors. As we discussed earlier, the 2021 to 2022 study is a sample survey, and the data collected from sample participants can be used to estimate population characteristics, keeping the results of the NRBA that we just discussed in mind. Standard error is a measure of variability of these estimates. It indicates how close an estimate derived from one sample is to the actual value in the population. The smaller the standard error, the more precise the estimate. Standard errors are also used when testing research hypotheses, such as the characteristics of two or more groups of children and the relationships between two or more variables. Because standard errors play such an important role in the research, it is important that they are accurate and that they capture the key features of the sample design. Many of the standard procedures found in commonly used statistical packages assume that the data are from a simple random sample, where cases are assumed to be independent from one another, and every case had an equal probability of being selected. Teachers and children in the 2021 to 2022 study sample are not independent, given the clustered nature of the study design. For example, teachers are clustered in programs and centers, and children are clustered by teacher. And not all sampling units have the same probability of selection. Thus, standard procedures are not appropriate for estimating standard errors generated from the complex sample design used in the 2021 to 2022 study. Software packages designed for simple random samples would tend to underestimate the standard errors for estimates derived from data from the study. Using inaccurate standard errors when testing research hypotheses can lead to identifying statistically significant results where none are present, a type 1 error, and vice versa, a type 2 error. Using the correct standard error will help to reduce the chances of both types of errors. Section E, Variance Estimation, in Chapter 6 of the Data Users Manual has more information. Okay, we've talked a lot about the limitations of these data. Now I'd like to give a few examples of the kind of questions that these data can be used to answer, and some guidelines around what questions cannot be answered through analyses of these data. Despite the issues that I've noted in our previous slides, Data from the 2021 to 2022 study may be used for a variety of analytic purposes. For example, child-level data collected as part of the program staff and family study provide rich descriptive information on children and families who participated in Head Start in the 2021 to 2022 program year, including characteristics of the child, the household and its members, including the physical and mental health of the respondent, and aspects of the child's home life, as well as children's current learning skills, social emotional development, approaches to learning, and developmental conditions and attendance. Data from this study may also be used to inform answers to questions about key subgroups of the Head Start population, such as families with low income, families of specific racial and ethnic groups, children who are dual language learners, children with identified disabilities, or those with several family risks, for example, children whose parents have less than a high school education, or those who live in single-parent families. Data from the program and staff study in spring 2022 provide rich information for describing Head Start programs and the context in which Head Start children and families receive services during the 2021 to 2022 program year, including staffing and recruitment, staff education and training, curriculum and assessment, program management, use of program data and information, staff background and professional experiences, the impact of COVID-19 on programs and centers, teachers' instructional practices, teachers' beliefs, and staff mental health and well-being. Next, we'll take a look at a few specific examples of the kinds of questions these data can be used to answer. For example, a data user might be interested in understanding the relationship, if any, between family economic well-being, resources, and supports in children's development. Data from the fall and spring parent survey, in combination with the fall and spring teacher-child report, can be used to answer this question. For the 2021 to 2022 data, the child-level weights that build on the program, center, and teacher-level weights should be used to analyze data on child outcomes from TCRs and parent survey data. Users could choose to use Users could choose to use T21R2 weights, which combines fall or spring parent survey data with spring TCR data and includes 802 records, or TR12 weights, which combines fall or spring parent survey data with fall and spring TCR data and includes 503 records. All of the necessary data is in the child-level data file, so there's no need to merge data files to conduct analyses for these questions. Now let's look at a question related to Head Start staff. When considering the program and staff study data, a data user might be interested in understanding if there's a relationship between the supports for staff well-being offered by Head Start programs and staff-reported job-related stress due to the pandemic. Data from the spring staff surveys can be used in combination to answer this question. We would recommend that users use the TCP2 weight, which combines spring response to the teacher survey, senior director survey, and program director survey, and includes 207 records. Data from the teacher survey is in the classroom teacher data level file, while data from the center director and program director surveys are in the center/program level data file. So to conduct these analyses, the data user would need to merge data sets. To merge spring 2022 center director source data with the classroom teacher data level file, use C2ID, which is the primary identifier in the center program level data file. To merge the spring 2022 program director source data with the classroom teacher data level file, first unduplicate the program level data from the center level program level file, and then use D2ID to merge the files. Okay, next let's look at a question related to teacher or classroom characteristics. A data user might be interested in understanding the relationship, if any, between teachers' mental health and children's social-emotional skills. Data from the fall and spring teacher survey, in combination with the fall and spring TCR, can be used to answer this question. We recommend using the PR12T2 weight, which combines parent survey data in fall 2021 or spring 2022 with TCR data in fall 2021 and spring 2022, and teacher survey data in spring 2022, and has 486 records. Again, data needed to answer this question exists across multiple files, so we will need to merge data sets to be able to answer this question. To conduct these analyses, the user would need to merge the spring 2022 Center Director source data with the 2021 to 2022 classroom teacher data level file using the C2 ID, and then merging the spring 2022 classroom teacher level source data with the child level data file using the CLS ID. On the child level data file, CLS2 ID should be renamed to CLS ID before the data merge. Okay, now let's look at some questions that we cannot answer using data from the 2021 to 2022 study. For example, a data user may wonder how Head Start children's social and emotional skills in the 2021 to 2022 Head Start program year compare to those of children in the 2019 to 2020 Head Start program year. This question cannot be answered by the 2021 to 2022 study data because data from FACES 2019, which was conducted in the 2019 to 2020 Head Start program year, is nationally representative of Head Start programs, centers, staff, and families, while data from the 2021 to 2022 study cannot be assumed to be nationally representative of these groups due to the lower than expected participation and response rates. There were meaningful indicators of non-response bias after waiting for program participation, and the 2021 to 2022 study did not achieve rates of child consent or parent survey, TCR, Center Director survey, or Program Director survey response comparable to earlier rounds of FACES, including FACES 2019. Accordingly, we do not recommend conducting cross-study analyses for child level or center program level data with data from earlier FACES studies. However, data from the fall 2021 teacher survey do support cross-study analyses with data from FACES 2019 or earlier rounds of FACES. However, users should note that these data were collected at a different point in time in the program year than past FACES teacher surveys, as FACES 2019 and earlier FACES studies only collected teacher surveys in the spring. Additionally, users should note that because the fall 2021 teacher survey was a shorter instrument focused mainly on teacher well-being, there are a limited number of variables available for cross-study analyses. Okay, let's take another look at a question that cannot be answered using data from the 2021 to 2022 study. A data user might be interested in what percentage of Head Start teachers exhibited depressive symptoms during the 2021 to 2022 Head Start program year. This question cannot be answered using data from the 2021 to 2022 study because data from the 2021 to 2022 study should not be assumed to be nationally representative of Head Start teachers or their centers, programs, or the families they serve. We cannot answer questions about Head Start teachers or any other group as a whole using these data. Instead, as in the previous slide, the data can be used to explore associations between teacher depressive symptoms and other data collected as part of the 2021 to 2022 study without making claims to represent all Head Start teachers. Next, let's discuss data users' resources. More information on the instruments and what was collected can be found in the user's manual. Let's turn to some resources that are available to help provide you with the information you need to analyze the data accurately and to publish from this complex data set. The 2021 to 2022 Study Data Users Manual is the primary resource for information about the study design and its execution. The manual includes useful information about the organization and structure of the data file and its use. The data files include many scores that were developed from responses to the TCR and parent survey, and variables and scores derived from responses to the survey items. The manual describes how each was constructed and offers guidance on which score to use for different research questions. Regardless of your experiences using data from large-scale studies, such as the 2021 to 2022 study, you should begin by reading Chapter 1 of the User's Manual in its entirety. It provides a brief introduction to the study, its design and limitations, and directs the reader on where to go for more information on some of the major technical issues researchers will confront when working with these data. The manual also includes 8 appendices that provide additional information about the 2021 to 2022 study and the data on the data files. The first 4 of these, appendices A through D, focus on the study design, in particular its instruments and measures. In particular, Appendix A contains detail on the design and instrumentation differences across phases studies, from phases 2019 all the way up through the 2021 to 2022 study. Appendix B includes our instrument copyright permissions. Appendix C contains an instrument content matrix for each of the study instruments and is an easy way to identify the types of measures and composites that are included in the 2021 to 2022 study. While information in the content matrices provides a way to quickly identify what kinds of questions might be answered using the data, researchers should look at the actual items in the study instruments and be familiar with the different standardized instruments that are used in the 2021 to 2022 study. For example, the G87 and the CESD. Appendix D facilitates this by including a copy of each survey and the TCR instrument that was used. Copyrighted instruments or scales, to include indirect assessment of social skills and behaviors, are not included per agreements with the instrument and scale developers and publishers. Chapter 3 of the user's manual details the original measures. For each variable on the file, the code books in appendices E for the center and program level file, F for the classroom teacher level file, and G for the child level file list the variable name and label, the data format and type, and include a set of descriptive statistics. Researchers can review these code books to guide analysis and note when values obtained in your data or values obtained in your analysis do not align with the data. However, this information is not intended for reporting. Appendix H includes detailed information about each of the composite variables and assessment scores that are listed in the tables in Chapter 7 of the user's manual. And Appendix I includes more detailed information about the non-response bias analysis we conducted as part of the 2021 to 2022 study. In addition to the user's manual, the OPRE website includes several types of products using data from the 2021 to 2022 study and past phases studies. Examples on the screen include products from the 2021 to 2022 study that have been released or are coming soon. First, we have study reports that have a set of data tables that provide information from all aspects of the study: parent surveys, TCRs, and surveys of Head Start staff. These reports include an introduction to study design and methods. A study report is where you can find the weighted percentages or averages on a broad range of topics that have specific numbers on the experiences and characteristics for Head Start children, families, and programs. 2021 to 2022 study will produce 3 study reports, 1 on fall 2021 data and 2 on spring 2022 data, covering the child level and program classroom level data. Next, we develop topical briefs that are shorter than the study reports, relying more on figures. Tell a story of a specific topic with great context. For example, the well-being of the Head Start teacher workforce. Lastly, we've developed a series of infographics that report on the COVID-19 experiences of children, families, and Head Start staff. You can find information on these products on FACES findings by scanning the QR code shown here and scrolling down to the links for briefs, presentations, and reports. Lastly, if you need additional support using data from the 2021 to 2022 study, you can contact the Mathematica study team at FACES-AIN-FACES-help at mathematica-mpr.com with questions related to the data and data analysis. And with that, I will turn it back over to Brenda for an overview of the Child and Family Data Archive.
Thank you, Maya. So launched in 2019, CF Data preserves and disseminates data on early care, education, and families and communities, as well as the programs that serve them. The 2021 to 2022 study data represents just one of the hundreds of data sets archived at CF Data, along with accompanying documentation available for secondary data analysis. And these data are all available to researchers at no additional charge. CF Data has a range of data, including on federal and state-funded programs such as Head Start, the Child Care and Development Fund Block Grant, and the Maternal, Infant, and Early Childhood Home Visiting Program. We also have administrative data, community-based surveys focused on parent and child development, and observational studies in classrooms and homes. The CF Data website is available at childandfamilydataarchive.org, as shown on the bottom of the slide. Through the website, you can explore our data sets, learn more about childcare and early education research, and discover the training opportunities presented by us. The Getting Started page is a great place for new users to get oriented to the website. It contains quick links to resources such as our infographics, which show the breadth of studies available at the archive, and it's grouped by, oops, by the age of the children being studied or by the data collection period, and also by the type of study. So if you're looking for cross-sectional or longitudinal data. We also have a how to search for data video, which has tips on using the search filters to better find what you're looking for. And then, of course, we have our frequently asked questions page. Under the Data tab, you can search and browse the entire CF Data catalog, including by the release date to find recently released or updated data, or by subject terms if you're not quite sure what data set you're looking for. There's also a helpful How to Access data page that can help you learn more about the access methods and application process. Other data-related tabs that I want to highlight are the variables and publications tabs. So these allow you to search for variables across all studies housed at CF Data, which is at this point about over 600,000 variables, I believe, and also our data-related publications, which shows publications that have cited a particular study. Under the About Us tab, users can learn more about CF Data, about our project team, and announcements, data releases, and upcoming trainings through the news link. We also have a collection of video resources on our website, which you can find under the Resources tab. So here you'll find many videos of data release webinars, such as this one, along with their accompanying slides, as well as specific data trainings offered by data producers. And you can filter by a particular data set using the filter shown here. So a video recording of this webinar will be found here. So this was just a brief overview of CF Data, but to learn more about the archive, we encourage you to visit us at our website and click on the About Us page to find a fun, short 2-minute video that introduces you to the collection and the resources. So now let's turn to how you can access the data from the 2021 to 2022 study. To find the study, enter the study title or acronym in the search box highlighted here. And then you can click enter or on the magnifying glass, and that will take you to the search results page. So here we are looking at an example using the FACES 2019 study. So as you can see on the search results page, that is the first study that shows up. And once you click on the study title, that will take you to the study homepage. Here is a screenshot of the 2021 to 2022 study homepage. So the homepage is where you will find important information such as a summary about the study and information on the study's methodology, sampling, weights, and more. The study homepage is also where users can search and compare variables and view publications based specifically on the 2021 to 2022 study data. So these data are restricted, as you can see with this red highlight here. So while users may preview and download the data and documentation, a restricted data application is required to gain access to the restricted data. However, you can still explore the data at the variable level without downloading the data. So you can use the variable search tab on the study homepage and search for and compare variables within the 2021 to 2022 study data. Simply enter words or phrases that relate to your measures of interest in the search box highlighted here. And then the search results will return a list of variables related to your search term, including information on the variable name, label, and question text if it's available, variable type, and the associated data set by data set number. The variable level search feature is another great way to identify variables of interest. And we recommend that you take a look at it in addition to exploring the study codebook, user guide, and other documentation. And then once you've decided that you'd like to use these data, you can begin your application by clicking on the Access Restricted Data button highlighted here, and then follow the instructions and complete the sections that are shown next. So the application requires several pieces of information, including a description of the intended research project, a data security plan, an IRB letter, and a signed restricted data use agreement. Please note that our restricted data applications require that the principal investigator hold a terminal degree, such as a PhD, JD, etc. However, people without a terminal degree can still access the data. You would just need a sponsor with a terminal degree, and they would be listed as the principal investigator, and then all other users would be listed here under research staff. Archive staff are available to assist you with your application and to answer any questions you may have along the way. Just email us at cfdata-help@umich.edu. And then for users who may already have access to one or more studies within the FACES series, you do not need to create a new application to access the 2021 to 2022 study data. You would simply go into your existing application and go to the data selection section, and then add the 2021 to 2022 study, which would be shown similar to this under the list of available studies. And then you would write a brief summary in your research description on why you require this particular data for your project, and then submit the application. And then we would review the modification and send the new data when approved. But as Maya mentioned earlier, I do want to note that some of the files within the 2021 to 2022 study are not recommended for cross-study analysis. So please keep that in mind as you request the data. And then lastly, I just want to remind you again to visit the CF Data website to request access to these data. And you can also sign up for our listserv to receive notifications on data release announcements, data webinars and workshops, as well as our quarterly newsletter. And you can always contact us at cfdata-help@umich.edu for questions or assistance on the data access or application process. And you can contact the FACES team on any specific data or analysis questions at faces-aian faces-mpr.com. And we will include all of this information in the video description below. So again, I want to thank you all for watching this webinar, and I want to thank Maya for sharing all of this great information with us. Thank you.